The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum that echoed through the circular room. Kiwoo Park straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform and walked forward, his black shoes clicking against the polished metal floor. Around him, hundreds of alien beings turned to stare. Some had scales that glittered like jewels. Others floated in tanks of colored gas. A few looked almost human, except for their purple skin or extra arms. Kiwoo had been Earth's ambassador for only 6 months, but he knew this meeting was different. The emergency call had come at midnight, jolting him from sleep in his quarters, on Nexus Prime Station. Now, as he took his assigned seat at the great circular table, he could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Prime Velthar rose from the center of the circle. The Axiom leader looked like a walking crystal sculpture, tall and angular, with light pulsing through his transparent body in slow waves. When he spoke, his voice rang like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The council calls this emergency session to order, Velthar announced. We gather today to address serious charges against the species known as humanity. Kiwoo kept his face calm, but his heart began to beat faster. He had expected this day would come eventually. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, having joined only 5 years ago after their first contact with Axiom explorers. Many older species still viewed them with suspicion. Defense Minister Hai-Jin of the Corvan Republic stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The Corvan looked like a lizard that had learned to walk upright, with dark green scales and bright yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. His clawed hands gripped a data tablet so tightly that Kiwoo could hear the metal creaking. These charges are not mere suspicions, Hai-Jin said, his voice a low growl. We have proof. Solid evidence of crimes against the sacred preservation protocols. A holographic display materialized above the center table, showing aerial views of a planet covered in green forests and blue rivers. Kiwoo recognized it immediately as New Jeju, one of humanity's newest colonies. The image shifted, showing the same planet 6 months later. Large sections of forest had been cut down. Rivers had been diverted. Mountains showed the scars of mining operations. This is what humans call progress, Hai-Jin continued, his voice growing louder. They arrive on pristine worlds and tear them apart like hungry beasts. They show no respect for the natural order that has existed for millions of years. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Kiwoo noticed how many representatives leaned away from him, as if his presence might contaminate them. Trade Consul Nixara of the Tidal Confederation rose from her water-filled speaking platform. Her dolphin-like form moved gracefully through the blue liquid as she spoke. The evidence speaks for itself, Nixara said, her voice translated through speakers that made it sound like singing waves. 17 worlds, 17 beautiful, balanced ecosystems destroyed in less than 5 years. My people have maintained our colonies for 1,000 years without causing such damage. The holographic display changed again, showing planet after planet. Each one told the same story. Humans arrived and the natural world changed drastically. Forests became farmland, rivers became straight channels, mountains became terraced mining sites. It looked like systematic destruction on a massive scale. Senator Killmoth of the tree singer species stood next. The ancient being looked like a walking tree, with bark like skin and leaves growing from his shoulders. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind through branches. My people have lived among trees for 10,000 years, Killmoth said sadly. We have learned to take only what we need and give back more than we consume. But humans, they take everything. They change everything. They leave nothing as they found it. Kiwu finally stood up, and the chamber fell silent. All eyes, whether they were compound like an insect's or single like a human's, focused on him. Some glowed with their own light. Others reflected the chamber's illumination like mirrors. But all of them showed the same emotion: disgust. "Honored representatives," Kiwu began, his voice steady and clear. "I have listened to your charges. I have seen your evidence. I do not deny what your satellites and sensors have recorded." This seemed to surprise many of the aliens. They had expected denials or excuses. War Chief Grix of the Hunter clans leaned forward in his metal chair, his 4 arms crossed over his muscled chest. The hunter looked like a cross between a tiger and a bear, with orange fur marked by black stripes. "You admit to these crimes?" Grix asked, his voice a deep rumble. "I admit that humans change the worlds we settle," Kiwu replied carefully. "I admit that we do not follow the traditional methods of colonization practiced by other species. But I ask for the standard trial period of 7 solar cycles to prepare humanity's full response to these charges." Prime Velthar's crystal body pulsed with brighter light as he considered this request. The sacred preservation protocols were clear about legal procedures, even in cases that seemed obvious. "The accused species has the right to present a defense," Velthar announced after a long pause. 7 solar cycles are granted. But understand, Ambassador Park, that the evidence against your species is overwhelming. Your defense will need to be extraordinary. Kiwu bowed slightly. "Thank you, Prime Velthar. 7 cycles will be sufficient." As the session ended and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Kiwu noticed how they moved around him. None came close enough to accidentally touch him. None made eye contact. To them, he represented something dangerous and alien, despite his human appearance being similar to several other species in the galaxy. Harmony speaker Lilwen of the Peaceful. Melody species paused near Kiwu's chair. She looked like a tall, thin human woman made of silver light, beautiful and ethereal. When she spoke, her voice sounded like soft music. "Ambassador Park," she said quietly, "my people have always believed in second chances. But what your species has done, it frightens us. We have worked so hard to preserve the balance of life in this galaxy. Why do humans seem determined to destroy it?" Kiwu looked at her glowing face and felt a moment of genuine sadness. "Speaker Lilwen, I understand your fear. But sometimes what looks like destruction is actually something else entirely. I hope you will keep an open mind during our defense." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly before floating away with the other departing representatives. Alone. In the massive chamber, Kiwu allowed himself a small smile. 7 cycles would be more than enough time. Not to prepare a defense, but to prepare the galaxy for a truth that would change everything they thought they knew about survival, preservation, and what it really meant to save a world. He gathered his materials and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. Outside, he could see the stars through the station's transparent walls. Somewhere out there, human colonists were working on 17 different worlds, changing them in ways that horrified the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Soon, those same civilizations would understand why. Dr. So Young Choi stepped off the transport shuttle onto the red dirt of New Jeju and immediately began taking readings with her handheld scanner. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of heavy machinery working somewhere in the distance. Behind her, 3 alien observers emerged from the shuttle, their environmental suits gleaming in the planet's orange sunlight. The atmospheric composition has changed by 12% since human colonization began, announced observer Kethel of the Corvan Republic, his reptilian voice muffled by his suit's speakers. Carbon dioxide levels are rising rapidly. So Young nodded and made notes on her tablet. As humanity's lead xenobiologist for the diplomatic mission, her job was to document everything the investigation team discovered. Whether it helped or hurt, humanity's case didn't matter. She was a scientist first. Engineer Tae-ho jogged over from the landing pad, his boots crunching on the loose soil. He wiped sweat from his forehead and pointed toward a line of hills in the distance. The main terraforming site is about 2 kilometers that way, he said. Captain Hyun-soo is waiting for us with the colony administration team. Botanist Min-ah emerged from behind the shuttle, her arms full of soil sample containers. Her usually neat black hair was already dusty and tangled from the planet's constant wind. I've taken preliminary samples from the landing zone, she reported. The soil chemistry is completely different from the original surveys. Mineral content is up 40%, but organic matter is down 60%. Observer Zil Nth of the Dio's Tidal Confederation made a noise that sounded like water being poured through gravel. Through his translation device, it came out as words of deep concern. This confirms our worst fears, Zil Nth said, his aquatic form visible through the clear aluminum of his mobility tank. Humans are strip mining the very life from these worlds. The investigation team climbed into a 6-wheeled transport vehicle and drove toward the terraforming site. Along the way, they passed areas that made the alien observers increasingly agitated. Entire forests had been cut down, leaving only stumps scattered across barren ground. Ancient rock formations had been blasted apart, their pieces sorted into neat piles of different minerals. This is systematic destruction, muttered observer Felnix of the tree singer species, his bark-like hands clenched into fists. My people take centuries to shape a single grove. Humans destroy more in one day than we would alter in a lifetime. So-young remained quiet, but she was noticing things the aliens missed. The cut forests weren't random. The stumps formed precise, geometric patterns. The sorted rock piles weren't just mining waste. They were organized by chemical composition in ways that suggested careful planning. They reached the main terraforming site just as the afternoon work shift was ending. Hundreds of human workers were climbing out of massive earth-moving machines, their faces covered by dust masks. The scale of the operation was breathtaking. An entire valley had been reshaped, with terraced levels carved into the mountainsides, and a new river channel running through the center. Captain Hyun-soo met them at the site's main building, a temporary structure made of metal panels and reinforced plastic. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady brown eyes, the kind of person who looked calm even in the middle of chaos. Welcome to New Jeju, Hyun-soo said, shaking hands with each team member. I know this looks pretty dramatic, but I think once you understand what we're doing here, you'll see it differently. Observer Kethal pointed one clawed finger at a massive crater where a mountain used to be. How can you possibly justify that level of destruction? That mountain was 3 million years old. Hyun-soo nodded seriously. It was, and in its natural state, it could support about 50 different species of plants and maybe 200 species of animals. When we're done with this project, this valley will support over 800 plant species and nearly 3,000 animal species. Impossible, said observer Zil Nth. You cannot create more biodiversity by destroying existing ecosystems. Can I show you something? Hyun-soo asked politely. He led them to a nearby building that looked like a cross between a laboratory and a greenhouse. Inside, rows of tanks and growing chambers lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Each one was labeled with scientific names that So-young recognized as native New Jeju species. Every plant and animal we've displaced is being kept here, Hyun-soo explained, walking between the tanks. Not just adult specimens, but genetic samples, soil microorganisms, even bacterial cultures. We're not destroying the original ecosystem. We're expanding it. Engineer Taeho pulled up holographic displays showing the terraforming project's timeline. Phase 1 is what you're seeing now. We break down the existing geographical barriers that keep species isolated. Phase 2 introduces controlled breeding programs that create hybrid species adapted to the new environment. Phase 3 reintroduces everything in a carefully balanced system. Minna was studying the genetic preservation chambers with obvious professional interest. "This is incredible," she said softly. "You're not just preserving species. You're preparing them for enhanced survival." Observer Felnix remained skeptical. "Even if your methods work, what gives you the right to change worlds that were perfectly balanced already?" So-young finally spoke up. "Were they balanced, though?" She pulled out her scanner and showed the readings she had been taking. The original ecosystem here was stable, yes, but it was also slowly dying. Genetic diversity was decreasing every generation. Several species were already showing signs of inbreeding depression. Captain Hyun-soo nodded grimly. "That's what we find. On most of the worlds we settle. They look beautiful and untouched, but they're actually in slow decline. Natural systems tend toward entropy without intervention." Observer Cathal's yellow eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that every world in the galaxy needs human intervention to survive?" "Not human intervention specifically," Hyun-soo replied. "But some kind of intervention, yes. Closed systems always run down eventually. They need external energy input to maintain complexity." The alien observers spent the rest of the day documenting what they saw as further evidence of human destructiveness. They recorded the stripped mountainsides, the diverted rivers, and the altered soil composition. Each measurement confirmed their belief that humans were environmental catastrophes waiting to happen. But So-young, Tae-ho, and Min-ah were seeing something else entirely. They were seeing the mathematical precision behind every change. They were seeing how the seemingly random destruction actually followed complex models designed to maximize long-term stability. That evening, as the team prepared to return to their shuttle, So-young made a discovery that would change everything. While calibrating her equipment, she noticed an anomaly in the planetary energy readings. The total biomass of New Jeju wasn't decreasing, despite all the apparent destruction. It was increasing. "That's impossible," she muttered, running the calculations again. Tae-ho looked over her shoulder at the data. "Unless they're not just rearranging the existing ecosystem," he said slowly, "unless they're actually building a more efficient one." Min-ah joined them, her own scanner showing similar impossible readings. The root systems in the preserved areas aren't just surviving. They're growing faster than they should be able to. Something is supercharging the biological processes here. The three humans exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that humanity's terraforming wasn't just about making worlds suitable for human habitation. It was about making worlds more suitable for life in general. As their shuttle lifted off from New Jeju's surface, So-Young stared down at the scarred landscape below. To alien eyes, it looked like a world under assault. But to someone who understood the mathematics of biological systems, it looked like something else entirely. It looked like a world being prepared for a future that none of the galaxy's elder species could imagine. Over the next 6 cycles, the investigation team would visit 16 more worlds. On each one, they would document the same pattern of apparent destruction, followed by impossible increases in biological productivity. The alien observers would gather what they thought was overwhelming evidence of human environmental crimes. But So-Young and her team would gradually piece together the truth about what humanity was really doing. And that truth would terrify the galaxy far more than any accusation of simple destruction ever could. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from species that hadn't attended meetings in decades had arrived to witness what many expected would be humanity's expulsion from the galactic community. The curved walls were lined with additional seating platforms, floating observation pods, and translation relay stations broadcasting the proceedings to billions across the galaxy. Ki-Woo Park stood at the defendant's podium, his hands resting calmly on the metal surface. Around him, the circular arrangement of alien representatives created a wall of hostile attention. Some species had sent their most senior diplomats. Others had sent military commanders. All of them radiated the same expectation of swift justice. Prime. Velthar's crystalline form pulsed with formal authority as he called the session to order. Ambassador Park, you have had 7 solar cycles to prepare humanity's defense against charges of violating the sacred preservation protocols. The evidence against your species has been presented and verified. How do you answer these charges? Ki-Woo took a slow breath and looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as possible. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast room. Honored representatives, I stand before you today not to deny the charges brought against humanity, but to confirm them completely. Every accusation made against my species is accurate. We are indeed systematically destroying the worlds we colonize. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Senator Killmoth of the Tree Singers rose from his seat, his bark-like face twisted with outrage. Then you admit to crimes against the fundamental laws of galactic civilization. War Chief Grix slammed one of his 4 fists on his speaking platform, causing it to crack. This confession demands immediate action. Humanity must be quarantined to their home system before they can cause more damage. Harmony Speaker. Lil Wen's silver form flickered with distress. How can you stand there so calmly and admit to destroying entire worlds? Do you feel no shame for what your species has done? Ki-Woo waited for the shouting to die down before continuing. I feel no shame because what you call destruction, we call preparation. What you see as death, we see as transformation. And what should terrify you most is not what we're doing to these worlds, but what we're preparing them for. He activated a control on his podium, and the chamber's central holographic display came to life. Instead of the crude before and after images the prosecution had shown, this display revealed layer upon layer of complex data. Biological charts, geological surveys, atmospheric analyses, and mathematical models filled the air above the assembly. Dr. Yoonji, please explain what our team has discovered, Ki-Woo said. A holographic image of a middle-aged Korean woman appeared beside the data displays. Dr. Yoonji was broadcasting from New Jeju, where she stood in what had once been a barren mining site. but was now a lush garden filled with plants that seemed to glow with internal light. Honored representatives, Dr. Yunji began, the world's humanity has modified are not dying. They are becoming more alive than they have ever been. New Jeju now supports 347% more biomass than it did in its original state. Species diversity has increased by 523%. Observer Kethal, who had returned from the investigation team, stood up abruptly. Impossible! We documented massive habitat destruction. You documented habitat transformation, Dr. Yunji corrected gently. The original New Jeju ecosystem was beautiful, yes, but it was also isolated, fragmented, and slowly declining toward genetic bottlenecks. What humanity did was break down the barriers that kept species separated and create hybrid environments where evolution could accelerate. The holographic display shifted to show genetic diversity charts. The numbers were staggering. Every modified world showed not just recovery, but enhancement far beyond original levels. Trade Consul Nixara's aquatic form moved agitatedly in her speaking tank. Even if your methods increase biodiversity, you had no right to make such changes without consulting the affected world's original inhabitants. The original inhabitants were dying, Kiwu said bluntly. Not quickly, not obviously, but inevitably. And they're not the only ones. He gestured, and the display changed again, showing star charts of the entire galaxy with complex mathematical overlays. Dr. Jae Sung's voice joined the broadcast from another location. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored non-binary beings, Dr. Jae Sung said, our statistical analysis of galactic civilization patterns shows a disturbing trend. 73% of spacefaring species are on trajectory toward critical population decline within 3,000 years. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of translation devices working overtime. Your current colonization methods, Dr. Jae Sung continued, while careful and respectful, are actually forms of slow suicide. By limiting environmental impact, you're also limiting adaptation and growth. You're preserving the appearance of balance while creating closed systems that must eventually collapse. Defense Minister He Jin's scaled hands were trembling with rage. How dare you lecture us about survival? My people have thrived for 50,000 years using traditional methods. And how long can the Corvin Republic continue to thrive? Kaiwu asked quietly. Your homeworld's carrying capacity has been exceeded for the last 2,000 years. Your colony worlds follow the same careful preservation model that prevents them from supporting significant population growth. What happens when your star begins to age? What happens when your carefully balanced ecosystems face disruption from cosmic events beyond your control? Prime Velthar's crystal body darkened slightly. Are you suggesting that our entire approach to civilization is flawed? I'm saying that your approach is beautiful, noble, and ultimately fatal, Kiwu replied. You've achieved something wonderful, a galactic community based on respect and preservation, but you've also trapped yourselves in stagnation. The holographic display now showed detailed projections for dozens of species. Each chart told the same story. Current population trends, resource limitations, and genetic bottlenecks leading to inevitable decline. My people have seen this before, Kiwu said, his voice carrying a weight that silenced even the most outraged representatives. We know what happens when civilizations choose preservation over adaptation. We know because we've lived through the consequences. Senator Killmoth leaned forward, his ancient eyes fixed on Kai Wu's face. "What do you mean you've seen this before?" Ki Wu paused, knowing that his next words would change everything. "Humanity is not from this galaxy, Senator. We are refugees, from a place where 100 billion souls made the same choices you're making now. We are the last survivors of what happens when preservation becomes more important than preparation." The chamber erupted again, but this time the noise was different. Instead of outrage, there was fear. Instead of anger, there was confusion. Species that had existed for millions of years were being told they were following a path that led only to extinction. War Chief Grix's voice cut through the chaos. "What are you preparing our worlds for?" Ki Wu looked directly at the Hunter clan leader. "For you, War Chief, and for every species in this chamber. The worlds we're modifying aren't just human colonies. They're emergency preservation sites, designed to support your people when your current worlds can no longer sustain you." "You're preparing refugee camps," Harmony Speaker Lil Wen whispered, her silver form flickering with shock. "We're preparing lifeboats," Ki Wu corrected. 17 worlds, each one capable of supporting multiple species at population densities far higher than their current homeworlds. Each one designed with the specific biological and environmental needs of every spacefaring species we've encountered. Trade. Consul Nixara's tank began to glow as her distress affected her bioluminescent patches. "You've been studying us, cataloging our biological requirements without our knowledge." "We've been preparing to save you," Ki Wu said simply. "Because someone has to. Because in 3,000 years, when you're beautiful, carefully preserved, home worlds can no longer support you. Someone needs to have prepared alternatives." Prime Velthar's voice was barely above a whisper. "And if we refuse your salvation?" Ki Wu's expression was grave, but determined. "Then in 3,000 years, this galaxy will be as dead as our last one, and the only ones left to remember your civilizations will be us." The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was absolute. No translation devices hummed, no environmental suits hissed. Even the soft background noise of the station's life support systems seemed muted. Every representative sat frozen in their seats, processing what Ki Wu Park had just revealed. Prime Velthar was the first to speak, his crystalline voice barely above a whisper. "Humanity is not native to this galaxy?" Ki Wu nodded slowly. "We arrived 11,000 years ago in the last functional ships of a dead civilization. Earth was chosen because it was isolated, uninhabited by intelligent life, and similar enough to our original homeworld to sustain us while we rebuilt." Defense Minister Hai Jin's yellow eyes were wide with disbelief. 11,000 years? But your species only achieved spaceflight 5,000 years ago according to our records. "Those records show when we chose to reveal ourselves," Ki Wu corrected. "We spent 6,000 years learning about this galaxy, studying its species, understanding the same patterns that destroyed our previous home. We watched civilizations rise and fall, always following the same careful, sustainable path toward extinction." Archaeohistorian Wei Jun's holographic image appeared beside Dr. Yun-Ji's, broadcasting from the Human Research Station on Kepler Prime. The elderly Korean man stood surrounded by massive data storage units and quantum computers that hummed with activity. "The evidence is overwhelming," Wei Jun said, his voice heavy with remembered grief. "Our original galaxy, which we called the First Garden, followed the exact same civilizational pattern we see here. Thousands of species, all committed to preservation and balance, all slowly starving themselves of the resources and environmental challenges needed for long-term survival. War Chief Grix leaned forward, his predatory instincts focused on understanding this new threat. How many species died in your first garden? All of them, Wei Jun replied simply. 137 billion individuals across 4,000 distinct species. They died not from war or natural disaster, but from the slow exhaustion of closed systems that could no longer adapt to changing conditions. Trade Consul Nix Ara's bioluminescent patches were pulsing rapidly with agitation. And humans survived. Because you were different? Because you were more ruthless? We survived because we learned to be different, Kiwu said. My ancestors were just as committed to preservation as any species in this chamber. They followed the same protocols, maintained the same careful balance, respected the same boundaries, right up until the day their star began to die and they realized their beautiful, sustainable civilization couldn't adapt fast enough to survive. Senator Killmoth's bark-like face was etched with ancient sadness. How long did it take? How long? Between the first signs of decline and total extinction? 2,000 years, Wei Jun answered. 2,000 years of increasingly desperate attempts to maintain the old ways while reality crumbled around them. Species after species chose extinction over adaptation. They preferred to die with dignity rather than live with change. The holographic display shifted to show star charts from humanity's original galaxy, marking the locations where great civilizations had once flourished. Each point of light was now dark, representing worlds that had chosen death over transformation. The last. Evacuation ships carried fewer than 1 million refugees, Kiwu continued. Out of 137 billion souls, less than 1 million were willing to abandon everything they knew for a chance at survival in a new galaxy. Harmony speaker Lil Wen's silver form was flickering with distress. And now you believe this galaxy is following the same path? We don't believe it. Dr. Jae-sung's voice joined the broadcast from his statistical analysis center. We've proven it mathematically. Every metric we can measure shows identical patterns to what we documented. In the first garden, population growth rates, resource utilization efficiency, genetic diversity trends, technological development curves, everything matches. Prime Velthar's crystal body had dimmed considerably as he processed this information. You're saying, our entire civilization is doomed? Not doomed, Kiwu said firmly. Threatened. But unlike the first garden, this galaxy has humans. And we refuse to watch another 100 billion souls choose extinction over adaptation. Observer Kethal, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. The worlds you're terraforming. You said they were prepared for us specifically? Dr. Yoonji nodded and gestured to someone off camera. A new holographic display appeared, showing detailed biological and environmental specifications for dozens of species. New Corva Prime has been designed to support Corvan physiology at population densities 10 times higher than your current homeworld, she explained. The atmospheric composition matches your optimal breathing mixture. The soil chemistry is calibrated for your preferred food sources. Even the day-night cycle has been adjusted to match your circadian rhythms. Kethal stared at the specifications for his own species, his reptilian features showing shock. This level of detail, you know more about Corvan biology than most Corvans do. We know more about galactic biology than most species know about themselves, Kiwu admitted. We've spent 11,000 years studying every civilization we could find. We've cataloged genetic patterns, environmental needs, cultural preferences, dietary requirements, everything we would need to preserve your species if your homeworlds failed. Trade Consul Nixara's tank was now glowing brightly with her emotional response. The tidal Confederation worlds you've modified, they have oceans? 17 of them, Dr. Yunji confirmed. Each one designed to support different aspects of aquatic civilization. Some have deep thermal vents for your manufacturing castes. Others have vast, shallow seas for your agricultural communities. We've even created hybrid environments where aquatic and terrestrial species can coexist. The chamber began to fill with a different kind of noise as representatives started talking among themselves, sharing information and theories. The reality of what humanity had been doing was beginning to sink in. War Chief Grix raised one of his forearms for attention. These preparations, they weren't just for preservation. You've been preparing for war. Kiwu shook his head. Not war, War Chief. Transition. The death of the First Garden taught us that the greatest enemy isn't external conflict. It's internal stagnation. When civilizations become too committed to maintaining existing systems, they lose the ability to adapt to new challenges. But what challenges? Senator Kilmoth asked. Our galaxy is peaceful. Our resources are carefully managed. Our population growth is controlled. Your galaxy is dying, Wei Jun said bluntly. Slowly, carefully, sustainably dying. Birth rates are declining across most species. Genetic diversity is decreasing due to careful breeding controls. Technological advancement has slowed because innovation requires risk, and risk threatens balance. Captain Hyun Su's image appeared in the holographic display, broadcasting from the bridge of the colony ship Seoul Horizon. The gray-haired officer looked tired but determined. In 300 years, the first major stellar events will begin affecting inhabited systems in this galaxy, Hyun Su reported. Solar flares, gravitational anomalies, cosmic radiation bursts, natural events that require rapid environmental adaptation to survive. Your current preservation protocols won't allow fast enough response times. And your modified worlds will? Prime Velthar asked. Our modified worlds are designed for rapid adaptation, Hyun Su confirmed. The biological systems we've created can handle environmental changes that would devastate traditional ecosystems. They're not just preserved environments, they're evolutionary laboratories. Kiwu looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives who were beginning to understand the true scope of humanity's project. Every species in this chamber has been assigned multiple backup worlds. Your genetic templates are stored in quantum-stable archives. Your cultural databases have been preserved across 17 different locations. Whether you approve of our methods or not, we have refused to let this galaxy die. Defense Minister He Jin's voice was quiet when he finally spoke. And if we say no? If we reject your salvation? Kiwu's expression was grim but resolute. Then in 3,000 years, when your homeworlds can no longer sustain you, we will still be here. The modified worlds will still be waiting. And we will welcome the survivors of your civilizations just as we hope someone would have welcomed the survivors of ours. You're not asking for permission, Harmony Speaker Lil Wen observed. You're telling us what you've already decided to do. We're telling you what we've already done, Kiwu corrected. The question now is whether you want to be part of preparing for the future, or whether you prefer to maintain your current path and hope we're wrong about what's coming. Prime Velthar's crystal form pulsed slowly as he considered humanity's ultimatum. Around the chamber, hundreds of alien representatives faced the most difficult decision in galactic history: accept salvation from the species they had condemned, or reject the only hope for their civilization's survival. Prime Velthar stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, his crystalline form dark with the weight of impossible decisions. Around him, hundreds of representatives sat in stunned silence, each grappling with the revelation that their entire way of life might be a slow path to extinction. "You claim to have come from another galaxy," Velthar said finally, his voice echoing like distant thunder. "Can you prove this?" Ki Woo Park nodded and gestured to his holographic display. Archaeohistorian Wei Jun's image appeared, standing beside what looked like a massive metallic wall covered in strange symbols and mathematical equations. "This is the archive vault beneath New Seoul on Earth," Wei Jun explained. "It contains the complete historical records of our original galaxy, including star charts, species databases, and technological blueprints from civilizations that existed millions of years before any current galactic species achieved spaceflight." The wall behind Wei Jun became transparent, revealing a vast underground chamber filled with crystalline storage devices and quantum computers. The scale was breathtaking, thousands of individual storage units stretching into the distance like a crystal forest. "Every piece of knowledge from 4,000 extinct species is stored here," Wei Jun continued. "Languages that haven't been spoken for 10,000 years. Scientific theories that preceded current galactic understanding by millions of years. Art, music, literature, philosophy, the complete cultural heritage of a dead galaxy." Senator Kill Moth leaned forward, his ancient bark-like features showing deep interest. "Could your archives explain how our ancestors developed faster than light travel? That knowledge was lost to most species long ago." "The FTL theories are in section C7742, Wei Jun replied without hesitation. "Developed by a species called the Void Walkers approximately 8 million years ago. They shared the technology with 47 other species before their sun went supernova." The casual way Wei Jun accessed such ancient information sent ripples of amazement through the chamber. Knowledge that the galaxy's oldest species, considered lost forever, was just another file in humanity's archives. War Chief Grix stood up, his forearms crossed over his muscled chest. "Even if you're telling the truth about your origins, what gives you the right to decide our fate? My people have survived for 100,000 years without human help." Captain Hyun Soo's image joined the holographic display, broadcasting from the bridge of his colony ship. His weathered face was serious but patient. "War Chief, with respect, your people have survived in carefully controlled conditions," Hyun Soo said. "But what happens when those conditions change? When your primary sun begins to output different radiation levels? When cosmic events beyond your control disrupt your planetary ecosystems?" "We adapt," Grix growled. "Hunters always adapt. Do." "You?" Dr. Yoon-ji asked, her image appearing beside Hyun Soo's. "Our biological surveys show that hunter clan populations have decreased by 12% over the last 500 years. Your breeding controls are so strict that genetic diversity is declining every generation." Grix's predatory features darkened. "Those are necessary sacrifices to maintain balance." "Those are symptoms of a dying species," Dr. Yoon-ji replied gently. "In the first garden, we watched dozens of species make the same choices. They all believed they were being responsible. They all died quietly and with dignity. Trade Consul Nixara's aquatic form moved agitatedly in her speaking tank. But you're asking us to abandon everything we've built. Millions of years of careful progress thrown away for your unproven theories. Kiwu shook his head. We're asking you to build on what you've created. Your civilizations are magnificent achievements, the most peaceful, stable galactic community in recorded history. But stability without growth is stagnation. Peace without challenge is entropy. The holographic display shifted to show comparative data between the current galaxy and humanity's records from the first garden. The parallels were impossible to ignore. Every metric, every trend, every civilizational pattern was nearly identical. Chakur, First Garden had the same success, archaeohistorian Wei Jun explained. 4 million years of peace. Perfect environmental balance. No wars, no conflicts, no suffering. It was paradise, right up until the day it started dying. Defense Minister Hai Jin's reptilian features were twisted with frustration. And your solution is to tear apart our worlds, to force change whether we want it or not? Our solution is to prepare alternatives, Kiwu corrected. You can maintain your current worlds exactly as they are. Continue your careful preservation protocols. Follow your sustainable development plans. But when those worlds can no longer support you, we will have prepared options. Harmony Speaker. Lilwyn's silver. Form flickered with emotional distress. You're talking about the end of our civilizations. Everything we've worked for, everything we've built. You're saying it's all temporary. Everything is temporary, Captain Hyun-Soo said quietly. Stars age, planets change, species evolve or become extinct. The question isn't whether change will come. It's whether you'll be ready for it when it arrives. Prime Velthar had been silent for several minutes, his crystal body pulsing slowly as he processed the enormity of what humanity was proposing. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of galactic history. You're asking us to choose between the certainty of our current path and the uncertainty of your alternatives. We're asking you to choose between gradual extinction and difficult survival, Kiwu replied. The same choice our ancestors faced 11,000 years ago. Most of them chose extinction. They preferred to die as they had lived rather than live differently than they had died. And the ones who chose survival? Senator Killmoth asked. They became us, Kiwu said simply. Refugees and wanderers, destroyers and creators. The ones willing to tear apart beautiful things to build necessary things. Observer Kethal, who had remained quiet throughout most of the session, finally stood up. The Corvin worlds you've prepared, they're really designed for our specific needs? Down to the molecular level, Dr. Yoon-ji confirmed. Atmospheric. Pressure, gravity, mineral content, electromagnetic fields, everything calibrated for optimal Corvin physiology. And you've done this for every species? Every spacefaring species we've encountered. 47 different civilizations, each with multiple backup worlds designed specifically for their biological and cultural needs. Kethal looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. They've spent 11,000 years preparing to save us from ourselves, War Chief Grix snarled. They've spent 11,000 years preparing to conquer us without firing a shot. If we wanted to conquer you, we wouldn't need prepared worlds, Captain Hyun-Soo pointed out. We have the technology to sterilize planets from orbit. We have weapons that could destroy entire star systems. But we didn't come to this galaxy to rule it. We came to save it. Trade Consul Nixara's tank was glowing with her emotional response. And if we refuse, If we reject your salvation and order you to stop terraforming our potential worlds, Kaiwu's expression was sad but determined. Then we'll respect your decision. We'll withdraw to the 17 worlds we've already modified and wait. When your civilizations begin to fail, and they will, we'll welcome whatever survivors choose to join us. You'll let billions die rather than force them to accept your help, Harmony speaker Lil Wen observed. We'll let billions choose. Ki-Wu corrected. The same choice we give you now. Accept difficult change or face eventual extinction. We won't force salvation on anyone, but we also won't let hope die just because others refuse it. Prime Velthar raised one crystalline hand for silence. The chamber fell quiet as the council's leader prepared to speak. The evidence you've presented is overwhelming, Velthar said slowly. The parallels between our galaxy and your first garden are undeniable. Your preparations for our potential survival are more comprehensive than anything we could have imagined. He paused, his crystal form pulsing brighter. But you're asking us to abandon the fundamental principles that have guided galactic civilization for millions of years. You're asking us to choose uncertainty over stability, change over preservation, your way over our way. Ki-Wu nodded. Yes, we are. And if we choose wrongly? If we accept your methods and they lead to disaster rather than salvation? Then we'll have failed together, Kaiwu replied. But if we do nothing, and you choose the same path that killed the first garden, you'll have succeeded in maintaining your principles right up until the moment you become extinct. The silence that followed stretched for long minutes. Every representative in the chamber was weighing the same impossible choice. Trust the aliens who claimed to be their saviors, or maintain the ways that had brought their civilizations millions of years of peace. Finally, Prime Velthar spoke the words that would determine the galaxy's future. The Galactic Council will vote on humanity's proposal in 7 cycles. Each species will decide for themselves whether to participate in your terraforming network or maintain their current colonization protocols. He looked directly at Kaiwu, his crystal eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like captured stars. But understand this, Ambassador Park, whether we accept your salvation or reject it, you have already changed us. We can never again look at our careful, peaceful civilizations without wondering if we're slowly dying.